What is truth? Answers from Buddha. Discovering the truth is a journey to discover the mysteries of the natural universe and deeply understand humanity itself. In the field of science, this is done through research and experiments to better understand the world around us. But what happens when we look inward, searching for the truth within ourselves? Buddha, through his quest for enlightenment, became a symbol of this. We all know that the Buddha, before becoming an awakened person, the enlightened one, was Prince Siddhartha, who witnessed the sufferings of life such as birth, old age, illness, and death. The Buddha gave up the throne to ordained. However, his decision to become a monk was not simply to avoid suffering, but to seek deeper truth. This urges us to reflect on the true purpose of becoming a monk and what benefits study brings to ourselves and others. Part 1. What did the Buddha realize? While most people accept the natural course of life from birth to death as an unchangeable cycle, the Buddha tirelessly sought the reasons behind this sequence of events. He posed profound questions. Where do we come from? What is the meaning of life? What does death lead to? And how can one escape the cycle of birth and death? These questions form the foundation of the search for truth. Prince Siddhartha, in his relentless quest, studied under renowned teachers such as Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta. He mastered the four jhanas and even states beyond form and formlessness. Yet, he remained unsatisfied, for the problem of existence still troubled him. He practiced severe austerities, but these extreme practices yielded no breakthroughs, only weakening his body. Eventually, he abandoned asceticism and followed the middle way, consuming moderate food to sustain his body. Then, he went to the Bodhi tree, sitting quietly with a firm determination to discover the truth. The realization of the recollection of past lives. Sitting in meditation like this until the 49th night, the Buddha first realized the recollection of past lives. He remembered countless past existences, from before becoming a Buddha to countless lives before that. He recalled being born in various places, under different names, belonging to different lineages, experiencing various forms of happiness and suffering, and living different lengths of lifespans. After death in one place, he was reborn in another, with different names and lineages. He remembered each life in detail, from general aspects to specific events, as clearly as remembering what happened yesterday. The Jataka tales record the past lives of the Buddha and his disciples in great detail. Thus, he solved the problem. What did I do before appearing here? The realization of the divine eye. At midnight, the Buddha realized the divine eye, seeing the lives and deaths of sentient beings. He observed the virtuous and the wicked, the beautiful and the ugly, all guided by their good and bad karma, leading them through the cycle of reincarnation. It was like someone standing on a tall building looking down at a crossroads, seeing clearly those who pass by. Thus, after death, humans do not cease to exist, but are guided by their karma, reincarnating through the 6 realms within the 3 realms. Seeing reincarnation within the 3 realms is like seeing beyond the planet we live on, where countless beings inhabit countless other planets. Therefore, in Buddhist scriptures it is said, the number of worlds is as numerous as the sands of the Ganges River in India. The Buddha's divine eye not only saw large and distant objects, but also microscopic entities like bacteria in a drop of water. He also clearly saw the causes and conditions that give rise to phenomena, whether tangible or intangible. Here, he resolved the profound questions: what happens to humans after death, and what lies beyond? The realization of the exhaustion of defilements. Finally, as the morning star arose, the Buddha realized the exhaustion of defilements. Here, he eradicated all seeds of birth and death within the three realms, achieving liberation from the cycle of birth and death known as nirvana. Thus, the question of why humans must traverse birth and death and how to transcend it was resolved. Here, he attained the truth. Where is this truth? Within oneself. He clearly saw within himself what constitutes birth and death and what leads to liberation. This is the realization of truth. Part 2. The deep truth within ourselves. Our practice of the Buddha's teachings is not a futile or arduous quest. Rather, it is an inward journey to discover the deep truth within ourselves. According to the Buddha's teachings, that truth is the realization of the cycle of birth and death, where karma plays the role of the origin. Karma manifests through greed, hatred, and delusion, expressed through thoughts, words, and actions, leading us endlessly in the whirlpool of suffering. While all three types of karma are important, mental karma is the focal point, as it is the source of all others. The Buddhist scriptures write that suffering, such as drinking boiling water or swallowing a hot iron ball, is not the greatest suffering. The true suffering lies in ignorance without knowing how to escape it. In the Discourse on the All, the Buddha taught about the ignorance when sentient beings identify themselves and their ever-changing minds. This is the ignorance, the deep-rooted cause of reincarnation. To escape ignorance, we need to discern between what is false and what is true. By practicing the Eightfold Path, we gradually approach the truth, approaching the gate of emptiness, where body and mind are no longer solid entities. And when we realize that body and mind are not real and learn to let go, not clinging anymore, we begin to recognize another truth. The Buddha encouraged us to ask ourselves, who is listening to the Dharma? This indicates that although thoughts may arise and disappear, the ultimate reality always exists, transcending the fluctuations of the mind. Venerable Vinaya Vinyaptimatratsanusmurti once said that this existence is always with us, never departing, yet cannot be found through any words or concepts. This existence is ever present, never departing from us, always silently present, but the conceptual search for it cannot find it. Therefore, the masters often say, under your feet or in front of you, rather than pointing to a specific location. Part 3. What is liberation? So, what is that ever-present thing called? Is it a person? Is it heaven? Or is it something else? Many practitioners wonder, why did the Buddha say that by ending the seeds of birth and death, one attains liberation, but he didn't specify what is liberated? If we say humans are liberated, it's not correct because humans are also part of the cycle of reincarnation. Saying heaven is liberated is also incorrect because heaven is also within the cycle of reincarnation. Because that ever-present thing is unmoved and doesn't create karma, it doesn't traverse the cycle of reincarnation. Therefore, we cannot say, what is liberated? We can only say liberation itself. Master Huineng once challenged the public with a spiritual riddle. I have something without a name, without a family, without a head, without a tail. Tell me, what is it? Shengxi, a clever nun, replied that it was the original face, the true nature of oneself. Master Huineng gently criticized, "You've obscured your own vision with that very understanding." We often attach names to nameless phenomena. In the process of practice, the important thing is to recognize the difference between creating karma and ceasing to create karma, between continuing the cycle of birth and death and ending it. Understanding the act of creating karma and choosing not to follow it, we will be present in non-birth and non-death, discovering the truth that everyone has but not everyone sees if they don't let go of notions of birth and death. If we continue to cling to these notions, we will never experience the deep tranquility and authenticity within. That truth is never lacking. In our practice, we must clearly see that on one side is the creation of karma leading to birth and death, and on the other side is ceasing to create karma, putting an end to the cycle of reincarnation. Knowing what creates karma but not following it, the state of non-birth and non-death is revealed. That is the truth. That truth is never lacking, but if one refuses to let go of notions of birth and death, it can never be seen. It's like a shadow screen. When images are projected onto it, the white fabric cannot be seen. Similarly, as long as one continues to chase after notions of birth and death, the true, silent essence cannot be seen. For example, when sitting in meditation, if a mosquito bites causing an itch or the knee hurts, it is the itch or the pain, not I, that is experiencing it. Everything is known. Being aware in such a way demonstrates that the true essence of a person is always clearly evident, never obscured. Yet, unfortunately, people refuse to look inward, know nothing about themselves, and instead, they constantly chase after illusions, feeling miserable, getting angry at others, being disturbed by all sorts of afflictions. There is love, there is hate, there is suffering, there is joy, and life is a mix of these, never settled. Only when there is neither joy nor sorrow, when one is serene and at ease, then one's face shines like that of the Buddha. Language cannot express the living truth. In our practice, we must eliminate all worries and not let them obscure our attraction. Over time, as we become proficient, the truth will manifest or enlightenment will occur. Enlightenment means no longer being subject to birth and death even while the body remains. Following the Buddha's teachings leads to enlightenment, which doesn't have to wait until after death, but can be realized during life by ceasing the cycle of birth and death, known as nirvana. Nirvana means non-birth. This nirvana is attainable by anyone and not far from human reach. Thus, the Buddha teaches us that to realize the salvific truth, one must clearly understand the seeds of birth and death and then practice accordingly. This truth cannot be found in scriptures and texts. Even if the scriptures accurately present the truth, they only represent the dead truth, as they involve one word interacting with another, unable to express the living truth. Because language cannot express the living truth and must be recognized within oneself, when Patriarch Bodhidharma went to China, he boldly declared, "Beyond words and scriptures, transmit outside teachings, directly point to the mind, realize one's own Buddha nature." Because the teachings written in words represent the dead truth, he wanted to point directly to the living truth. So he had to point directly to people's minds, recognizing enlightenment within oneself. Even if we study Buddhist doctrine up to the level of a bachelor's or a PhD without practice, we will not recognize the truth. To realize the truth, one must personally engage in practice. Only through practice can one see the truth manifest as it truly is. Because practice is returning to the living truth within oneself, not seeking it elsewhere. When the Buddha was about to attain enlightenment, he didn't seek to read scriptures and texts. He simply sat quietly under the Bodhi tree and attained enlightenment. Historical records clearly document this. So now you understand why the patriarchs made such bold declarations. We must understand the Buddha's teachings and then clearly define our own path of practice. Otherwise, we may feel stagnant in our practice and think that if only we were educated, we would climb to higher levels and gain respect. Thinking this way deviates from the path of practice. We must understand the true value of practitioners as those who diligently cultivate to liberate themselves from birth and death. That is the essential issue. Part 4. How to practice. In the journey of inner cultivation, we often ponder on the methods of practice. I always emphasize that when a seductive thought arises, we must practice recognizing it and letting it go immediately. Some may ask, if the knowing about the seductive thought is also an illusion, then what? This shows that they haven't fully understood how to effectively apply the tools of practice. Illusion is like a wild bull. To control it, we need a whip and a rope. We need to scold it. Recognizing illusions as unreal and not pursuing them, over time we will become proficient and illusions will fade away. When there is nothing left to scold, we will find natural peace, not by abandoning the tools of practice, but by the tools themselves naturally dissipating. Expanding on the issue, we can recall the case in the Sutra of Questions of Malunkyaputta, where Malunkyaputta asks the Buddha, "Is the world finite or infinite? Does the Tathagata exist after death, or does he not exist after death, etc.?" and declares that if the Buddha does not answer these questions, he will leave the monastic life. Then the Buddha rebukes Malunkyaputta as being foolish. It's like someone who's been shot with a poison arrow refusing to have it removed and instead wanting to know, who shot me, what do they look like, what material is the other arrow made of, how is the bowstring, etc. This person will die before learning what he wants to know. Similarly, humans often are curious about the external world, considering extensive knowledge as intelligence and sophistication, but they overlook the most important thing in life, ceasing to create karma and living truthfully to liberate from the cycle of rebirth. However, despite knowing so much about the universe outside, we remain blind to ourselves. Only when we understand ourselves clearly do we see the outside world clearly. This is extremely important. Without clarity on this matter, the path of practice will not be firm, and we will quickly become tired and want to give up. Only when we recognize the precious value of the path we are on can we achieve true happiness, a happiness that is incomparable to worldly joys. We, practitioners on the path of cultivation, often encounter pitiful scenes in the modern spiritual world. Many people, not truly understanding the truth, blindly enter temples, recite Buddha's name, and thus spend their whole lives. They may accumulate good karma, but remain ignorant of the deep nature of spiritual practice. Therefore, the crucial thing is for practitioners to clearly identify where the root of the practice lies and to eliminate all illusions that obscure that root so that truth can manifest. It is the foolishness that makes humans cling tightly to the self, the mind. We believe that this body belongs to us, but in reality, we do not know how each cell inside operates. We cannot command them. If the house is ours, we have the right to arrange and decide the position of each object. But clearly, with this body, we have no authority. When hungry, we feed it, and the body digests and excretes, a cycle that we do not fully understand internally. Accepting this body as ours is a serious mistake. When realizing that the body is not mine, we will clearly see that pain and facing death are due to nerve stimulation and that death belongs to the body, not to me. With this understanding, the fear of death and suffering will no longer exist. In the past, when praising the Buddha as the supreme physician, I used to think that calling him a doctor was sufficient. But now, I realize that he deserves that title. The greatest doctor in the world may save a life, prolong it for 10 years skillfully, while the Buddha only shows us the path to escape from the cycle of birth and death, no longer being controlled by life and death. As disciples of the Buddha, how should we practice to transcend the cycle of birth and death, to no longer be controlled by it? The liberation from birth and death is the highest joy that the Buddha has taught us. While all other joys in this world are temporary and fleeting, we, as disciples of the Buddha, must learn how to practice to break free from the cycle of birth and death, to not let it dominate us. Liberation from birth and death is the eternal joy that the Buddha has preached, while all other joys are fleeting and unstable. We will all grow old and die. The wisest thing is to recognize the cause of birth and death, to avoid it, to live in truth, not bound by birth and death, which is the ultimate goal.